Thanks for tuning in to the Lean 911 podcast, where you'll have a voice directly from the Gemba. I will rely on my 3 decades of lean successes as well as my failures to answer your most challenging questions regarding your lean transformation. I'm your host, Mark DeLuzio, President and CEO of Lean Horizons Consulting and the Principal Architect of the Danaher Business System. Looking forward to your questions. Now, let's go to the Gemba. Hi, Mark DeLuzio, episode 68. We're going to talk today about institutionalized waste, and in particular, 2 forms of waste. We all heard of Mura, which is your 7 classic waste of inventory and defects and transportation and all that. But the other 2 forms of waste I want to talk about today are Mura and Muri. Very rarely do we talk much about these wastes. Mura is waste from what's called unevenness, and Muri is overburdening. I sometimes like to call Muri unreasonableness, okay? But overburdening, I guess, is the correct translation from the Japanese. And I want to talk about these 2 forms of waste because most of these wastes come from policy, either written or unwritten in your company, basically your culture, how you do business. And very few times do we challenge the framework in which we're trying to make improvements and try to make improvements within that framework. And it doesn't seem to work now, does it? So let's start with this premise that I've learned over the years and I've developed. Yeah, we all want to become great. Every time we go out with a lean endeavor, a lean transformation, please don't call it a program. But anyway, we want to become better. And I think you could probably argue we all want to become great at what we do. I've realized that you cannot become great if you're trying to optimize a suboptimal framework. Let me repeat that. You cannot become great if you're trying to optimize a suboptimal framework. What do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about the bigger picture for a minute. And I'll get into more specifics in a few minutes, but how many times have you heard people kick around the term value stream mapping in value stream organizations? I see it on LinkedIn all the time. There's all kinds of books written on it, all kinds of posts on value streams. And remember the book that came out in the mid-90s, John Shook and Rother, they came out with the book Learning to See, which, by the way, very good book. The first 10 years at Danaher, when I architected and oversaw the creation of the Danaher Business System, we never used a value stream map. Matter of fact, we never learned a value stream map from the original senseis who were the hand-picked lieutenants of Taiyoshi Ono. We never learned how to do it. Now, I am not saying that value stream mapping is not valuable. Forgive the pun. What I am saying is, like any other tool, you use it when it's required. And I've seen a lot of misuses on value stream mapping. Now, I'm not going to get into value stream mapping as much on this episode today, okay? I'm trying to make the point, though, that value stream mapping organizations are usually limited to the manufacturing equipment and sometimes don't even go into order entry, which, you look at the information flow up above and sometimes don't even touch the material side of it, which is a really key thing if you're in manufacturing. And you put this person in charge called the value stream manager, but the value stream manager has very little autonomy and control over the resources that they have to engage to be successful. Let me give you a case in point. I had a client who made equipment for trains. Okay. And as I'm touring the plant, a lot of focus on the shop floor, and, trying to get all that straightened out. But in the back, they had this one lady who was wonderful, ran the refurb department. So what would happen is customers would send back the equipment to be refurbished as opposed to, buying new equipment. It was cheaper for them to do that. And that's where they made the money. The money-making part of that business was on the refurb part of the business, not selling the original equipment. Again, it's the razor blade type concept, right? But this poor lady had all these jobs stacked up. So I walked in there and I said, what's going on? And she, by the way, a lot of these jobs were very similar product families. Product type A, you kind of did the same thing when you refurbed it. Same with B and same with C. So we could have set up nice refurb lines or cells and got that moving just like a production cell. But all these things were lined up. They're up in shelves. They were all over the place. And I said, why are these here? She goes, I have no resources to do the things I need to do. I said, what do you mean? Well, they kind of look at this as kind of like an afterthought here. And I got customers calling up like crazy, screaming at me as to where their products are. But I, for example, can't get any time and attention from the quality engineers. Now, the quality engineer reported into a function led by the VP of quality. And for her to get a quality engineer over to do the things she needed to do, it was like an act of Congress. You had to, make the sky move and the waters part to get somebody to help her. So it backed everything up. So here she's trying to do lean things. Here she's trying to, instill the principles of lean and the tools and the methodologies, but the framework is all screwed up. Her value stream that she had created, and everybody, there thought, hey, we got value streams, right? Was useless because of the way the company was structured. I have other clients right now that they have such large silos. Each silo is their own entity, and nobody works together, whether it's procurement, manufacturing, engineering, it doesn't matter. And they're all making unilateral decisions that affect each other, but they're never consulted. They're never consulted because they're trying to optimize their performance in their function. And you probably heard me say this before. And it occurred to me one time I was giving a talk to a CEO and his staff, a multi-billion dollar company. And this just popped into my head as I was talking to them. If you try to optimize any one function, you will sub-optimize the enterprise. I can guarantee you that. I don't care if you're finance, HR, engineering, marketing, IT, manufacturing. I mean, go down the list. If you try to unilaterally optimize your function, you will sub-optimize the enterprise. And this is where we learned this the hard way at Danaher when we created the Danaher business system and policy deployment, which is our Hoshin planning strategy deployment. We learned that you had to have a multifunctional team working equally with the same set of goals. I can't incentivize purchasing to buy the lowest, get the lowest cost, and then demand that that manufacturing have the highest quality. We have to have shared goals, so we're not, you know, talking over each other and missing on the bigger picture. Happens all the time. So take a look at your policy. So let's go into some specific policies. Um, I'll give you actual examples. I had a client. they had a policy, a sales policy, where their salespeople would get measured or get compensated on on shipments. It was the end of the quarter. Sales had to meet their goals. So what the sales guys did is they went out to their customers, who by the way got measured on purchase price variance, okay, and incentivized them by lowering the price and saying, "Hey, look, we're gonna if you take 2 months worth of goods, we're gonna discount it by X%." And these guys said, "Yeah, sure." So right there, we violated the just-in-time principle. See, whenever you see things like this, you go back to the principles and you say to yourself, "What principle am I violating?" In this case, we violated, or they violated, the just-in-time principle because you forced the client or the customer to take product before it was needed. You forced manufacturing to make product before it was needed. Remember, it's supposed to be in the right quantity, right? Now, if you look at if you look at the behaviors, manufacturing incurred incredible extra costs, expediting shipping and overtime and everything else. And the sales guys got their bonuses. No, yeah, by the way, the collateral damage on this was the following month, there were no orders. So now what do you do with your labor, right? Because they drained the pipeline. But this particular company got 30% of their monthly orders that month in the last 2 or 3 days of the month. Want to talk about a hockey stick? Wow. So I went to the CEO and I said, your sales team won, your enterprise lost. What do you mean? What do you mean, Mark? We got great sales. Yeah, look at your margins. You took a haircut on the top. You actually had to cut your price to incentivize your client, your customers to take product, and manufacturing incurred all these extra costs. So congratulations, you made your month. I don't know. I'll tell you. That sales policy alone was not in concert with lean principles for a number of different reasons, but one of them being not overburdening with which Muri, but unevenness because this plant was trying to do hierarchical level scheduling. That's like me coming to your house and saying, okay, well, you got a family of 4, you serve dinner every night. And on Wednesday, I say, oh, by the way, 20 people are coming over tomorrow night for dinner. The whole apple cart's upset. Or I don't have enough plates. Where am I going to sit them? What am I going to cook? Who's coming? That kind of thing. How am I going to, cook for 20 people? That's what they did to this plant. Okay. You can't run a factory that way. You can't run a business that way, right? So there's one example. Another example is this whole business about OEE, original equipment effectiveness, which I've had podcasts on before. I'm very adamant that that's a bad measure. Most of it is based on machine uptime. And I've told this story before on this podcast, and I'll tell it again. I was with the CEO and the CFO of a multi-billion-dollar company. We're at one of their plants in Arkansas, and we're walking around, and I asked a very innocent question. I said, "Hey, by the way, how do you pay people in this plant?" And they said, "We pay them on machine uptime. Everybody here gets paid on machine uptime." Wow. Okay. Why do you do that? The CFO said, "Because we paid a lot of money for this equipment, and we got to get our return on investment." Oh, okay. Now, in the meantime, they weren't changing over to the products they needed to make. They were skipping on PM activity, so machines were breaking down, leaking, all kinds of problems. And they were building inventory and they were losing orders. They were losing customers. Customers were canceling orders because they were late. They weren't getting new business. So this great return on investment mentality. And I told them, I said, you're going to meet your goal of reducing your costs. You're going to reduce your costs to 0.
because you're going to go out of business. No, Mark, you don't understand. We paid a lot of money for this equipment, and we need to run it so that we get our ROI. Okay. So I said to the CFO, didn't you just tell me the other day that you bought a brand new Lexus? Yeah, I bought a Lexus, he said. Just picked it up last week. Okay. They're kind of expensive, right? Yeah, kind of, but they're worth it, he says. They get great trade-in value and okay. When you go home tonight, are you going to ride that Lexus around your neighborhood for, I don't know, 5 hours tonight just to get utilization out of your Lexus? He says, what are you talking about? Well, I asked the question, are you going to ride the Lexus around the neighborhood tonight so you get utilization out of your equipment? Why would I do that? I have no idea. I really don't. But you're doing it here. Why are you wanting to run this equipment, especially when you don't need it or you're running product that you don't need? You wouldn't do it to your Lexus for the obvious reasons. I don't need to tell you what those reasons would be. Be very wasteful, right? Well, you're doing the same thing here. So stop doing that. Okay? Just stop. You guys probably heard my joke. Guy goes to the doctor, raises his hand over his head, and he says to the doctor, Doctor, every time I do this, it hurts. And the doctor says, well, don't do that. Okay? That'll be $200. Thank you. Hope you have insurance. Stop doing stupid stuff. You can't take ROI to the bank. But here is a policy, Mura and Muri, okay, that drove on lean behaviors. Absorption accounting is the same thing. When your finance guys tell you build as much as possible, regardless of demand, we're going to capitalize our costs into inventory and make our profits, our accounting profits, look really good. Now, I know some of you aren't finance people out there. You may not understand how that math works. Suffice it to say that the more you put into inventory, the better your profits are going to look. Okay. All you're doing is deferring the cost that you incurred onto the balance sheet in an asset account called inventory. Okay. Sooner or later, that inventory has to come out. Sooner or later, that inventory has to either be sold as cost of sales, and in my previous example, it would be sold as cost of sales when you sell it at a cheaper price, or you're going to have to write it off. You're going to have to write it off for obsolescence. It's going to come out sooner or later. It's going to come out. And the sin about that is you got cash flow. You're eating up cash flow by spending money, putting it into inventory. And if you're at the 10% cost of capital, which in carrying cost of inventory usually around 20%, and you got $1 million of inventory that you don't need, that hits your bottom line for $200,000 a year. And those are real numbers. Those aren't fake numbers, okay? So here's another example of a policy called absorption accounting that's driving all this waste. And now you're the lean guy, and they're saying, hey, we don't really see a lot of this flow through. I'm not feeling it. I just saw that on LinkedIn earlier today, where the CEO said, I'm not feeling the change. I'm not feeling it. That's only because you're doing stupid stuff. So how are you going to be great and change and improve and do all the things necessary when we got these kind of overarching policies and frameworks set up in which you have to operate in? Here's another example, the sales policy, the OEE crap that we talk about, the value streams that are pretending to be value streams. You see, we're not setting ourselves up to win. Then there's all the false metrics. Cost of poor quality for a Three Sigma company sitting around 20 to 30% of revenues. I've seen people report cost of poor quality. Yeah, we're at 1.9% of revenues, and we're doing great because it's down from 2.1%. 2.1%. There's absolutely no way these companies that I've been to are that low. There's no way. The hidden costs are the ones that are killing you. Again, a lot of these hidden costs are hidden costs that were just, quite frankly, well, hidden. You have no visibility of them. Okay. So there's all kinds of things from a framework point of view, usually coming out of policy, that make it real tough to make improvements in a suboptimal framework. So if you're not staffing your second shift the way you're staffing your first shift, I remember Nakao saying to me, one of my senseis, he said, "Yeah," he said, "How come you don't have maintenance on second shift? And how come you don't have engineers on second shift?" Oh, Nakao, and I gave him some BS answer. Well, if you don't need them on second shift, then you don't need them on first shift. You should fire your maintenance department and get rid of your engineers. That's what he said. It was mind-boggling to him that we were running a second shift without maintenance support. And then when the machine goes down and we come in the morning and we find out, geez, second shift really sucked last night. They never do. You know why? They're here by themselves and nobody's paying attention to them and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, that's true, but they're not misbehaving. They're not set up to win. The person responsible for second shift is trying to do good things in a framework that you yourself put in place. That's just a losing proposition. I don't know. This stuff should not be that hard. It should not be that hard. And when you look at these communication problems between functions, I'm still hearing, yep, design designs it and throws it to us in manufacturing, and then we got to deal with all the crap. Really? Your desk is like 3 doors down from engineering. You're too small to have these problems. You can't get together and work on the design together as a cross-functional team with all the right players, with finance and marketing and engineering and design and manufacturing and HR. You guys can't get together like there's some you know force of nature that's forcing you to work in these kind of environments. It's just mind-boggling to me. I'm still hearing this now after almost 4 decades of doing this. The old proverbial, yeah, design throws it over the wall, and we got to deal with the crap. When are we going to stop this crap? When are we going to stop this BS? Get off your ass and go talk to somebody and hold regular meetings and change the framework of what is you're doing. Who's stopping you from doing that? Now, there may be legitimate reasons why you're being stopped from doing that. And that's maybe another matter for another day. But I can guarantee you, if we took the initiative, but we're not all being measured as a team, are we? We're being measured as from our functional leaders for our own functional goals. And that is part of the problem. When we put policy deployment together and we put the multifunctional teams together to deal with each one of the annual improvement priorities in our policy deployment, the whole team got compensated and measured the same way. We didn't say, okay, well, the manufacturing guy on the cross-functional team will be measured with this set of metrics, and the marketing person will be measured with this set of metrics, and the design engineering team would be measured with this set of metrics. No, we said the whole team gets measured with the same customer-facing objectives. Things like lead time on new product development, hitting our target costs, designing out unprofitable things so that on job one we're hitting our target cost. Um, quality, time to market, all this kind of stuff, and they all got measured together. I don't know. It's not that hard. But when you look, I'd be interested for you guys to get back to me and let me know. My email's right there on the bottom of the screen. But let me know, Mark at lead911.com. Let me know if you're facing this. Are you trying to improve in an environment that the cards are stacked against you? I see it all the time.
Thanks for listening to the Lean 911 podcast. I'll be happy to address your questions or feedback on future episodes. Email me at mark@lean911.com. You can check out our other episodes by visiting our website at lean911.com, our YouTube channel, wherever you listen to podcasts. This is your host, Mark DeLuzio. Thanks for listening.